One. Hi, Tom. I have some questions about Warner. And what I found online says that there's some information, but we'll never really know for sure. So it looks like the information that's out there, there's some assumptions being made. And I was wondering if you have done any research in this area.
I have, as a matter of fact, and it started with the genealogy project I started years ago, and I just kept running into new things, and I found Warner, and I found these books that I'd never known were written about our family. There's three books in the United States written about our family, and they all have the assumption that we came from Holland. And that I've discovered is not the case. Um, what happened was our seventh great grandfather, Warnarr, was orphaned, and I believe it was about the year 1646 or 1648, somewhere around there. He was orphaned at the age of 2 years old. Uh, and at that time, there was a lot of unrest in Europe. The 30 Years' War was just ending. There was mass famine, mass migration. Armies were crossing Europe, and along with them, bringing disease and famine. So we kind of made assumptions that he lost his parents the same year, either due to famine or war or some tragic incident like that. But he wound up with the almshouse in Amsterdam. At that time, Belgium was not really a country. It was more of a territory, so, and everybody was fighting over it. Holland, Spain, Germany, I mean, France, everybody had war in that country at one time or another. But we assumed from war that he became an orphan and wound up in the almshouse, and they were overcrowded and needed to do something. And it just so happened that they had established a new colony in what was America. And at that time, it was called New Amsterdam. The year would have been 1654 that Warner came here. He would have been about 9 years old at that point, which is the perfect age for shipping over to be labor, because that's what they were doing. They were shipping them over here to be labor. And he came over here on a ship called the Pear Tree, and he was listed as one of 20 orphans. And so we'll never be able to prove that his name was on there, but we can prove through other things that he was on that ship. In late 1659, 1660, Warnarr sued Jason, I believe it was Jason Stoutenberg, for wages and clothing for 2 years. And that was 1660. So that meant he had to be here before 1658 in order to work for that 2 years to get paid. But then on top of that, there was another unpaid service. So when you came over here by ship in those days, you either served a 5 year or a 7 year, I don't know what they would call it.
Indentured servants?
Yeah, indentured service. And in return, they would teach you a trade. And so Warnarr wound up with a Dutch family, Stoutenberg, and this is all documented too. And he wound up speaking Dutch. And so he probably taught his children Dutch, which he had 19 different children through two wives, as you know, we've discussed a little bit about. And so, it's amazing that he comes at such a young age, survives such a thing, learns a trade, and then marries two women and has 19 kids. Yeah, that's a pretty good story. But anyway, he spent 6 months on that journey, and that had to be a rough journey itself, because that's 6 months on the ocean from June to December. I gotta think that winter would be the rough years on the ocean, or the rough times on the ocean. So yeah, they spent their 6 months on the third level of a ship, all to start a new life here. And what's interesting about Warnarr is, since he was an orphan, he knew nothing about his family in Belgium. So he couldn't say what his history was, but we were able to track it through today's internet and the way everything's being digitized. So yeah, he came to the New World, New Amsterdam, and at that time it was a Dutch colony, not a British colony. So Warnarr was here for at least 12 years before it was a British colony, before the British took over. So he was here. The Dutch colony, I would guess, was no larger than 300 people. So I'm guessing everybody knew each other. Everybody was marrying into the same families and whatnot. And if you notice throughout our tree, you're going to be seeing names that you'll see were part of the history in the new colony in New Amsterdam, like Westbrook, and there's a few other names that you'll notice that are, very big, very well documented out in the new colony. So yeah, from there, Warnarr started a major family in this country, and that's where he started. He didn't migrate from the New Amsterdam. He died there, I believe, but his children migrated, and they were constantly on the frontier, always moving on the edge of the frontier. So, yep, that's a story about Warnarr.
That is just such a big adventure for such a small child, and what challenges he must have faced.
I think that in those times, 1654, a 9-year-old must have been like close to an adult. They must have really been forced to grow up fast. But yeah, I cannot imagine, and it's fun to think about, that kind of thing. But yeah, he was the patriarch of everybody in this country. It can be tracked down to one person. And now I've gone even further. I've gone way past Warnarr, since I was able to find out who his parents were. His parents came from Belgium as well. So yeah, but that's for another story. And we'll go into that eventually. But yep, that's Warnarr's story in a nutshell.
Well, thank you for all the research you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the interview. I appreciate it. And we'll probably put this on both our YouTube. So.
Okay, great.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.